This silhouette game looks interesting enough. Hey EGS, do you know how long this game is?
17時間です。
17 hours? Nice. Short and sweet. I guess I'm going to give it a try. Well, that was completely off the mark, but whatever. How about this other one?
19時間です。
19 hours. Okay, are you sure about that? No more funny business? All right, whatever you say. Let's boot this one up, I guess.
12時間です。
When it comes to untranslated VNs, one of the biggest challenges has always been finding interesting yet unknown titles. VNDB and EGS can be very helpful, of course, but with obscure games, you often have the issue where there's either not enough data or that the data itself isn't exactly reliable. At that point, you kind of have to rely on your instincts, or better yet, find scenario writers you like and simply play their stuff, regardless of how popular those might be. That was what made me try this game. If you have been following the channel, the name Terios might ring a bell, or maybe not. Anyway, some weeks ago, I reviewed a visual novel called Lycoris Radiata, which I ended up enjoying more than I thought I would. So when I found out that another title of theirs was partially written by Tanaka Romeo, curiosity got the best of me, and I'm glad it did. Hey there, this is Marin, and this is my review of Chanter Kimi no歌がとどいたら. The story revolves around Mikiya, a third-year high schooler who was once an exemplary student but has since lost his motivation following his parents' divorce. He usually hangs out with his friend Chitose, as well as his teacher and mentor Koji. One day while out on a walk with Chitose, they run into their childhood friend Sakura, who also happens to be Kuji's daughter. She has recently returned to their hometown with her mother after several years away. The three of them then spend their summer vacation idly, enjoying their time together. However, when unexpected and troubling news comes to light, they decide to form a band and perform at the school festival, as this might be the last chance they have of creating one final, unforgettable memory before stepping into their adult lives. As you can see, the premise itself is your fairly standard visual novel about youth. In this sort of case, the make-or-break factor is the cast. And I think Chanter fares quite well in this regard. The characters were all distinct, each with their own unique quirks. Personally, I was particularly fond of the teacher, Koji. I think it's a very interesting and refreshing approach to have the closest male friend role being filled by an adult rather than a classmate. It also helps that he as a character was simply hilarious, in great part thanks to the amazing delivery of his voice actor, who, fun fact, is the same dude who voices Vegeta in Dragon Ball.
気づいたらうちのリビングに置き手紙があって見てくださいこれ
He also plays Fukahire in the Suyokusa series and is one of the main reasons why those games are so popular in Japan. One thing to keep in mind regarding Chanter is its structure. I've seen a few complaints saying that the common route is too long, and while I don't entirely disagree, I think that feeling comes down to the fact that the common route itself is essentially split into two main arcs. The first one is your usual common route affair, consisting mostly of slice-of-life scenes to establish the group dynamics and hint at some personal conflicts. I will admit some scenes dragged on for a bit too long, but there was enough comedy to make me want to push through them. This arc is followed by a second one, focusing on the formation of the music band, which is where the story branches out into the individual routes. However, this change isn't that pronounced, which has both its pros and cons. On one hand, it makes those narrative transitions feel smoother and more organic. But at the same time, there are some repeated scenes and events which can make further playthroughs slightly tiresome. To be honest, I didn't mind that much, mostly because this game has one plot twist that's simply amazing. What makes this revelation so great is how it basically spreads through every single scene of the story. The foreshadowing was also absolutely fantastic, being simultaneously subtle yet extremely obvious once you know the truth. There's one particular scene that, upon rereading, made my jaw drop, as every line took on an entirely new, different meaning. Moreover, this twist is prominent in every route. And I do feel that in some cases, the game expects you to be already aware of it. For that matter, while the game doesn't force you to, I think it's important to go through the routes in a somewhat specific order, with the first one being Chitose's route. I should probably first warn you that if you aren't a fan of childhood heroines who often physically abuse the protagonist, you will struggle to find Chitose likable. She's violent, childish, and impetuous. I seriously don't know why or who would even like her. I hereby would like to formally retract my previous statement. On a more serious note, I'm not sure what's up with Terios and their tendency to create goblin-like heroines. First it was Kukuru in Licorice Radiata, and now it's Chitose. Although I guess going from a lowly goblina to a titty goblina can be considered an improvement. Still, just like in that game, I think her portrayal was so over the top that I eventually warmed up to her. I don't know what's going on with that hairstyle though. I mean, I thought Sumika's air vents in Move Louvre were kind of charming, but these are now already antennas. Or maybe cat ears. Anyway, when it comes to her route, I think it's the one that handles the twist the best, which is why I recommend playing her route first. This is also where Romeo's reflective writing style is the most evident. Unfortunately, it seems like the whole purpose of this route was to build up to that plot twist, leaving Chitose's personal conflict feeling a bit underdeveloped. The route also has a questionable start, where the protagonist does something really stupid, but at least I think it sticks the landing with its ending. As for the next routes, while I don't think the order matters that much, I would personally go with Ayasi's route next, probably in part because it was the one I enjoyed the most. I think the banter between her and the protagonist was deeply engaging thanks to their polar opposite personalities. Her route was also, in my opinion, very well paced, featuring some events that caught me completely off guard. The other three routes were perhaps on the weaker side, but not without their merits. Sakura's route had slightly wonky pacing, but it was mostly saved thanks to Koji's presence, as well as her being cute as a button. She had a certain purity that contrasted nicely with the rest of the cast. And just look at that smile. Is it even possible to dislike her? Yuki's route might perhaps be the least engaging one from the game. While it did have some nice ideas, such as incorporating the main twist into the route's narrative, I also felt like it forgot some aspects hinted during the common route and only briefly delved into what seemed to be the important ones. I also found her slightly bland personality-wise. While I understand her role in the group dynamic, serving as a calm counterbalance to more intense, chaotic characters like Chitose, on her own, she's a bit boring, to be honest. Finally, there's Kotoko, the tomboyish girl with a secret. Her route should definitely be played last, mainly because it already assumes you know what the twist is about. One thing I liked about this route was how it didn't waste any time with its main plot reveal. Their relationship also worked quite well. It was satisfying seeing the two of them grow to trust each other. Before moving on to the presentation, I guess I should talk a bit about the writing considering the people involved. As I mentioned, Tanaka Romeo worked on this, but so did Hino Wataru, who you might know from VNs such as Hello Lady or Rui Watomo Oyobu. If I'm being honest, the quality of the writing was slightly inconsistent, probably to be expected considering the multiple writers' involvement. There were some really interesting inner monologues, and some of the jokes were quite clever in a silly but fun way. At the same time, there were other parts where not much was happening, and I even spotted a handful of goji here and there. All in all, I wouldn't go in expecting some sort of hidden writing masterpiece in Chanter. Visually speaking, I think the game's art was pretty good, although in my opinion, it was a slight downgrade compared to Licorice Radiata, mostly due to the different character design artist. Still, the CGs looked really nice, although the amount of Panchira was out of the charts. For some reason, their skirts completely defied the laws of physics. Sprites, on the other hand, were a mixed bag. Some had very exaggerated poses, almost like something you would see in a DreamWorks movie. Chitose was particularly guilty of this. Like, look at this sprite. What's even going on here? Hold up, let me give it a try. Wait, I'm still missing something. Okay, now we are talking. Anyway, one aspect that surprised me was the drop in quality regarding the engine. While technically using the same as in Licorice, the game lacked lots of features that game had. Skipping, for instance, was very clunky. The regular skip previously read text function didn't skip sprite pose changes or transitions. which made it really sluggish. But conversely, force skip did. So what I ended up having to do was use the regular skip while very slightly tapping the force skip to speed things up. The text box itself also looked extremely dull and basic. I really don't understand what happened here. Fortunately, the soundtrack slapped. In particular, I liked Chitose and Sakura's themes. The former is the one I used during the story section of this video, while the latter I think fitted very well Sakura's characterization. It felt very innocent and cheerful. Here, let's listen to it for a bit. Look at her go. All right, dear, that's enough. I do, however, have bad news, which is that the game doesn't have a music playback feature as an extra, like literally every single other visual novel does. Why Chanter? Why? Oh, what's that? If it isn't every single music track from the soundtrack. It would truly be a shame if someone were to extract all of them and save them on their computer. Anyway, the voice acting was also quite solid. I find it surprising that the VA for Chitose only has this one credited role. I thought she did a really good job. But then again, Koji's voice actor absolutely stole the show. Probably the first time I've seen a side character overshadow so much the rest of the cast.
まとめ
To conclude, Chanter ended up being far more interesting than I expected. Its main plot twist is, without exaggeration, one of my favorites from any visual novel. It makes you reconsider how every single scene is presented. And once you know the truth, seeing the subtle hints it was actually leaving in front of your eyes was deeply enjoyable. On the other hand, the roots themselves weren't as intricate as they could have been, with some plot elements being rather underdeveloped. Nonetheless, to me, the fun character dynamics and the clever foreshadowing more than made up for those narrative inconsistencies, although I can see some people thinking that those are not enough. Not me, though. I think the game is great. I give Chanter Kimi no Uta ga Todoitara an 8 out of 10. And that wraps up the review. I know the game isn't perfect, but I think EGS is seriously underselling it with its aggregate score of 65. On VNDB, it now has a 6.3, but I don't particularly believe that most of those users have actually played the game, let alone finished it. Also, out of all the Tanaka Romeo written visual novels, this is apparently the least played one. I don't know. I think it deserves a bit more attention. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. See you next time. Mirin out.